Hi, my name's Jan Wood. Welcome to today's program, and today we're talking about Irene Gower's portrait and the Portia Geach exhibition. Now, we've been archiving the process of this portrait, and as you can see, it's me. What I accidentally did, because I had my camera at the sittings, I have filmed Irene painting the portrait. So it was very fitting that she's come here today with the finished portrait, and she's on her way to delivering it to the judging venue.
The Portia Geach is an art competition that's for women only, and Portia Geach was an artist, and she had a sister called Florence Kate Geach, and Florence she endowed this art competition in honour of Portia. A lot of well-known women painters in Australia have either exhibited in Portia Geach or won it. So it's been a tremendous help to women artists to get exhibited in what I think is still a pretty male-dominated world. When I finished the painting, in prosaic language, I was assailed by many emotions. One of them is joy, because it's finished, it's done, I set out to do something and I've completed it. Another one is relief, that it's sort of okay, it looks like Jan. I did go some way towards making the painting how I originally thought of it. And then it's also, it forces me to look at the difference between the dream, which was the idea of painting Jan, and the actual reality of what finally emerged after we did our sittings and I wagged my paintbrushes around. And there's another feeling too, which it's the dark side. The dark side is you look at it and you say, well, baby, you did your best and that's as good as it gets. I find that whenever I've done a work, which reinforces to me the reason why I paint in the first place, which is joy for the act of painting rather than having a finished product.
So just the process of archiving, the process of painting a painting. I've run this past a few people and they find it quite fascinating. It's called secret artist business, and not many artists are brave enough to share the entire process of painting a painting from beginning to end. We'll share with you the process of Irene Gower's portrait of me.
This painting has only just got going, and the way I've started this painting was with chalk. I started with a raw canvas, which is something I don't normally do, but sometimes paintings have a way of they just happen. So I started drawing with chalk because it was such a big canvas. I didn't want actually layers of paint on it. I wanted just outlines which were very delicate so they could be worked over or changed. Then in order to fix the chalk, I just used a squirty bottle and put painting medium, which is basically clear paint, into the put the squirty bottle in and just squirted it enough to fix it so you can actually run your hand over that and the chalk is fixed. And now that I've got Jan here to actually sit, I'll start working on it with paint. You can see the difference between the chalk and the paint. I've started with a little bit of paint up here. And I know you're all saying, what's she sitting on? Why the black swans? And that's because Jan is the coordinator of SWAN, which is the School of Women Artists Network, which is a global organisation of women artists. And Jan's the founder and the coordinator, and she's taken exhibitions to many parts of the world. She's travelled to Russia and exhibited work there, from what she calls her travelling suitcase exhibitions, which are what they sound like. They're mostly works on paper so that they can be transported easily and lightly, and they are often actually copies of the originals so that there's no danger of them getting destroyed or lost, because they go to the most amazing places. They go to Nigeria, Russia, New Zealand, America, all over the place. In fact, I think some of the travelling exhibitions that Jan has instigated have probably been the longest travelling exhibitions ever. They'd certainly rival Judy Chicago's dinner party, I think. So I thought Jan was a very worthy subject for Portia Geach, because the subject that you paint for this competition has to be a man or a woman who is well known in the arts, science, or in letters in some way. And I thought with all the things that Jan's done, she actually crosses several of those boundaries. And so the School of Women Artists Network, the way you say it in shortened version is SWAN. So I've got SWAN. Swans all over the place here. They're in formation. Women like swans. I think if they act in formation, they deflect a lot of the wind. They break the wind for each other. I think women getting on in this world do that for each other. So I like the idea of having Jan on the lead swan and all the others in formation behind. So the next step is to get Jan to put down her video camera and climb up on my bolster and pretend it's a swan, and then we'll get going with stage 2 of this artwork. You how I felt about doing the painting. Maybe Jan would like to say what it felt like being the sitter, having someone stare at you intently with their face twisted up in concentration, and having to hold your hand up or sit on a bolster and pretend it's a swan, or whatever form it takes.
Well, it was a unique experience for me because no one's ever asked me before if they could paint my portrait. And being a swan, you always have a go at something.
Yeah.
You always have a go. And it's been enormous fun. I think the process that evolved of me filming you as you painted me is so synchronicitous.
Yeah.
And here you are in the middle.
Yeah.
It's actually 2 portraits. There's me and you. And you've painted yourself with little hair clips.
My devil's horns.
You devil, you.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how this process has evolved. Now, painting the portrait for me was, I learnt a lot about myself, and I learnt how bossy I am. And after the first sitting, when I come home, I rang up Irene and said, "Oh, please forgive me. I suggested all these things that you should do." I said, please ignore me. You know, it's... I'm a compulsive director because I've been filming things for so many years. I just constantly, automatically arranging things and thinking things through. And also I'm very bossy on account of if you're bringing up a family, and you're mothering children,
you just run the show.
You have to be the boss.
Yeah.
So for me it was interesting, but enormous fun. I have had such fun doing this, and you have been so patient with me. You've never smacked me if I suggested something.
Yeah, well, you didn't swear at me either, so, you know. But you can see, and I think the viewers can see, that it becomes an incredibly intimate process.
I love the painting. I just love the painting. And I think it's very funny how this little thing that we didn't set out to do, this double portrait or a portrait inside a portrait, has evolved.
Yeah, it's like the endless mirrors when you've got the video camera and the video camera, and we're on the painting and we're stuck in here.
And I don't think it's ever been done before.
And I've really enjoyed doing it. And if we get back again to Portia Geach, many times I've thought about her and her sister, because I've exhibited and been hung in this show, I can't remember, 3 or 4 times before in the 1980s. And, you know, I felt this great rush of gratitude for these 2 women who gave who gave women artists a chance to be exhibited in times which have been pretty hard generally for that to happen.
I think that Portia Geach must have been a very swan-minded woman.
Definitely.
And her sister,
Yeah.
who bequeathed the estate to promoting women artists, because obviously they understand that women artists have there are specific problems with being a woman artist. And maybe it isn't so hard these days, but Portia Geach was born in 18... What is it, 18?
I'll just check the documents, Jane.
Okay.
Portia Geach was born in Melbourne in 1873. Later on, she studied in England at the Royal Academy of Arts. She won a scholarship and then exhibited in Paris, New York and England. So she was a pretty accomplished painter in her own right. Portraits became her speciality, and she later painted Edith Cowan and Sir John Quick. Portia was a very political woman too, and I thought you might, Jan, enjoy the fact that she had a lot to do with housewives. About 1917, she came back from New York and formed an association, the Housewives Progressive Association, and she was concerned with things such as dates on eggs, prices of meat, preservatives in food, the kind of things that housewives today are still very concerned about. Portia died in 1959 and left her estate to her sister, Florence Kate Geach. And when Florence died, in her turn, she set up a bequest of £1,000, which was a considerable amount in those days, to be a prize for women artists to paint a portrait of someone well known in the arts, science or letters. And that original £1,000 has increased over the years, and this year it's worth $18,000, which would be a very nice sum for a woman artist to come into. So I've got nothing but eternal gratitude to these two women. Well, Jan, I'll explain a little bit here of what's happened. From yesterday, when we just started off with the chalk drawing, this was entirely a creation out of my imagination because you hadn't yet arrived on the scene. So you arrive and I get you up there and I say, okay, whack the camera on your shoulder, and the first thing I discover is I've drawn the camera on this shoulder, but you always have it on this one, and in fact it has to be on that one because if you can see, if you move the camera to that shoulder, the eyepiece would be out here. It's a right-hand person's camera, so it has to be on that shoulder. The second thing was your pose. I had actually drawn you with a twist in your body that it was impossible to sustain. And in fact, if you'd held a video camera on your shoulder at that angle, you probably would have been in hospital the next day. So you can see here that we're working on changing the angle of your body, and we're changing your pose. This hand, which started off, well, nowhere, and then it went stretched out, and now it's coming in a bit to actually fit on the canvas. So that's an artistic consideration there where we pull it in. The swan is probably starting to change shape a bit, but we'll fix that up when we've got your pose. And that was so interesting when we got you to sit and balance the camera and pretend you were sitting on a swan. What happened was both feet went out as extra balancing points. I had them originally locked under the swan's neck. I was thinking that you'd be hanging on with your legs, but in fact when you did it, you used this hand and both feet as extra balance points. So you're going to be so flying. I'm pleased that we've really worked out that pose. The other thing we've done is put the curvature of the earth in, Seeing you're a high flyer, you definitely see a bit of curvature there. So now we've done a bit of work on the face, getting down, sort of a start on that. Quite happy with this angle here. I think it was important to me that you actually looked as though you were bearing the weight of that camera, because it is a very heavy camera. And I love the idea that's developed of you're almost videoing the viewer who's looking at you. So you get this constant play between, the viewer to you and back again. It's, what do you call it? Perpetual motion. So we have our swans in perpetual motion. So, okay, well I look forward to the next sitting, Jan, and we'll see what develops. You're putting yourself on somebody's hands, and we all know that sometimes what you think you're going to get, you don't.
Now it's the fourth sitting. I'm over at Irene's house, and Irene's going to tell us where she's up to on the
So we
portrait.
move that arm up, so we're not working too close to the edge of the picture. And so this arm is balancing her, and she's also showing off the little swan logo. What was going to be reflected in the camera here has turned out to be the artist. So we're getting lots of cross dialogue going with the videoing of this process, plus Jan's looking at me being the painter, and then the painter's reflected back in the video camera. This sort of takes on shades of ad infinitum, which I like, a little bit of tricky. What else have we done? We've worked on defining the swans a little bit. We've worked quite a lot on the housewife's dressing gown. Yeah, coloured in the legs perhaps, done a bit more work on the feet. Thought, but haven't actually done much about grading the colour of the ocean, because that will be much paler on the horizon and deeper in the front. We'll also extend a bit of this colour, this yellow here, that will kind of make another diagonal across this sort of stepwise arrangement of legs and necks and wings. Now we do the final detail on Jan's glorious visage. And then I'll probably take me a couple of days to pull all the background, pull the quality of the painting up so it's more sea-like. A bit more work on the swans, and then bingo, she'll be done. Well, Jan's finished the sitting, and this face, which was sort of like Jan, I now consider to be very like Jan. It's actually a bit harsher than Jan, because I've made lines quite heavy, which after she's gone I'll just knock them back a bit so that so the contrast between the lights and darks and things here isn't so marked. So they won't look like wrinkles a centimetre deep, they'll just be delicate little facial expression marks.
Okay, so now you're on your way to deliver it to Botany.
Yep.
And the judges come in.
There are nearly 300 entries. So the place where the judging is, I think, a big warehouse, and I imagine they put out all the work and then they probably cull them out to about 50 maximum, possibly less, and then those works get exhibited at the SH Irvine Gallery, and that exhibition starts October the 15th and goes to November the 14th.
So we'll go and video that too.
Oh, we'll have to. We'll have to put you flying it. Well, this is assuming I get hung. Yeah, so we'll go and film that too, and
Okay,
we'll see.
we'll go and film it anyway because we are supporting women artists.
That's true. I'm not the only one. And actually, it was a Swan who won last year, wasn't it? Was it not? Yeah.
Anita Rezevka, a wonderful, wonderful artist and woman. Irene, thanks for painting my portrait. I just love it.
Well,
such fun.
Can I just say one thing to finish off with, Jan, that when I've been painting portraits of women, I've felt, probably like you feel, that I've been archiving women's history, which tends to not happen. And over the years, I've gradually painted portraits of several women who I think will want to be remembered in our feminist future.
I'm with you.
Yes.